My name is Aaron Mars, and I'm a historian at the Office of the Historian in the U.S. Department of State. Well, the State Department is the cabinet-level agency responsible for U.S. foreign policy, and my office is located in that agency's Bureau of Public Affairs, and we have two principal functions. One of the things that we're most known for is the publication of a documentary series of primary documents called Foreign Relations of the United States. And that series has been published continuously since 1861. And so we have historians in our office who do research and compile volumes in this series, and then we work to get the volumes declassified and the material released to the public. I actually work in another part of that same office, which is called the Policy Studies Division, where we handle requests from within the department for historical analyses of contemporary events or explorations of past U.S. policy on a certain topic. History is very important to the work that the Department of State does. When Foreign Service officers are out in the field, or we have desk officers here in Washington who are monitoring events, they are going to want to know what their predecessors have done or what policy has been over time. We obviously have the United States has very long relationships with different countries, or a treaty may have a particular history, and so if something happened 40 or 50 years ago, obviously the people who did those initial negotiations won't still be around. So we can help out in our office by providing contemporary policymakers with the historical context they need to move forward with the work that they're doing. In my day-to-day work, I spend most of my time working with other historians. It's sort of like a history department in a university. There are about 40 or 50 of us who are working at the State Department, and so we do a lot of work together to create these projects. And then secondarily, I would say I also work with other people in the department who have put in requests to us for studies. So I'll talk to them to ask them about sort of what they're looking for or the historical information they're interested in learning more about. And then I do a lot of work with my colleagues to design research plans, execute projects, and then finally write these papers and products that the people in the department are interested in. So I've spent a fair amount of time doing research in our own archives of the Department of State, doing work at the Library of Congress, going out to retired files of the National Archives. So a typical day might involve research. Once that phase is over, I would spend a lot of time writing, just as a historian would in a university setting. But we also do things that might be a bit unusual for historians employed in universities. We have a public mailbox service, so we get questions in from the public where we research and answer those. We do conferences. We do other sort of outreach activities, so preparing for those. We have committee meetings. I mean, we do sort of the usual stuff that goes along with an office. So research and writing are at the heart of what I'm doing every day, but there's also a wide array of other activities that go along with my work. So one of the things that's interesting for me is to see what sort of questions are coming out of the department. What is it that current day policymakers are interested in? And it's a big world. The United States has relationships with countries all over the globe, and so one of the real interesting parts about this job is that there is always something different coming up. The policy, the things that we're asked to study, and the things that we're asked to come up with historical analyses about. It's a lot of things that we're reading about today in the newspaper, and so I think one of the most interesting things is that there really is a contemporary relevance to what I'm doing. Being a historian for the federal government means having flexibility. As a general rule, I've been asked to work on policy studies that focus on sub-Saharan Africa, and then I also do some work on the institutional history of the department, although we have several other people who are working on that as well. One of the great things about graduate school is that it teaches you how to learn, right? I mean, you're not just learning about your topic, you're also learning about how to do research and, how to frame an argument and how to write concisely, hopefully. And so one of the advantages of having, my particular background in this job is that it's may not always be easy, but I'm at least comfortable moving towards other things because I have the general framework of how a history of something should be put together. And so by going to graduate school, I've learned a lot of strategies that let me be intellectually flexible as the job requires. And, working in the federal government is not something that I probably knew a lot about when I started graduate school. But because I was fortunate enough to go to a school that had a quality public history program, I learned more about those sorts of opportunities while I was in school. There is an organization, the Society for History in the Federal Government, that has on its website a directory of all federal history programs in the government. And when you look at that directory, you see that there's a wide variety of programs out there. Some doing work similar to what we do, some that are much more publicly oriented, some that are much more internally oriented, and so it sort of runs the whole gamut. And so I think if students are interested in working for the government, they should, check out that directory, get a sense of what's available, and when you're in graduate school, take the opportunity to learn about these possibilities, maybe get a little bit of variety in the assistantships that you're taking, so it's not, just classroom teaching, but you've done a number of other things. Again, I was lucky enough that by the time I graduated, I had done classroom teaching, I had done independent research, I had worked in an archives, I'd worked in a museum, and then I'd done this editorial work on the encyclopedia. So I had a wide variety of things on my resume already when I was coming out. When I did finally graduate, I had a nice set of skills that ended up being attractive to an employer. So